Game Off is a game jam hosted by the GitHub every year. Devs had 1 month to create and submit a game around a theme, which this year was waves. And I was one of those devs. I made an exploring survival game set in the desert. I wanted to share some of my thought process on the decisions I took while making this game, and also a few things I learned. I guess that makes this a devlog video? I'm not sure, but let's just get into it. That has to be the worst intro of all time, I'm so sorry. The guys organizing the jam kindly gave us a lot of ideas related to waves. Ocean waves, radio waves, waves of enemies. My brain immediately gravitated towards the idea of electromagnetic waves. Either using them as a way to communicate, a way to attack enemies, or a way to detect things around you, like a radar. All of these electromagnetism mechanics just led me to one idea. Robots. The only two interpretations for waves that I could think of, not included in the jam page, were one, psychic waves, which are a common depiction for abilities like telepathy and telekinesis, and the other interpretation I came up with was heat waves, which is just a weather phenomenon of extremely high temperatures. And when I thought of heat waves combined with robots, I got it. A game where you control a robot that has to hide or protect from periodical heat waves, otherwise you will overheat and die. I had a couple of other concepts that I didn't fully explore. One was with the psychic waves. You could have an UFO bullet hell, where the enemy attacks are waves of 2 different colors and you have to phase through them by switching your own color. The other was like a puzzle game, where the objective is to connect several radio towers by placing robots in between that would act as signal repeaters, and there will be obstacles or enemies, so you must think about where to place those robots. But puzzle games make my brain hurt, so I just didn't focus on this one at all. So I just immediately fully committed to this heatwave idea. I was writing down stuff like brainstorming concepts, and then I just went and wrote 2 pages of ideas for this game. How will you survive the heat waves? Oh, I know, with water. How do you obtain water? You explore around and find it. How do you find it? Is it just gonna be there? Oh, I know, with a radar. You use a radar, which is a radio wave theme of the jam, and the radar will show you spots where water is hidden, so your robot will dig and find the water. But wait, what if the water was like the fuel of your robot? So you will have a tank of water, and if you get caught by a heat wave, you overheat, and then the water evaporates, and if you run out of water, your robot dies. But wait, if you have to dig for water, what if you could dig for something else? That could be the objective of the game. Not only survive, but dig out treasure or something. Bro, I was locked in. I was so excited, I knew what I wanted to do. So, it was time for planning. If you ask any decent game dev, they will tell you the first thing you should do is a gameplay prototype. Don't worry about graphics, don't worry about story, don't worry about anything besides your gameplay. Put some squares in there and make them work. And if you like how they work, then you move on. So what I did was not that. Look, I 100% agree that you should start with a prototype, but that just doesn't work for me. I've tried doing this in previous game jams, and what would happen is that I finish my prototype. It's working, I like it. Now it's time to make it look good. And there is where I lose all motivation and just abandon the project. It has happened to me several times. So what I did a while back when I started Nexus, that's a Zentreya fan game I'm working on, more on that at the end of the video, was start with the graphics. I started with the character models and animations. And this made me realize something about myself, is that I work better and I stay more motivated when I deal with the most difficult stuff first and leave the easier stuff for last. And since my strongest skill by far is programming, the most difficult task is making the game look good. Graphics, UI, those are the things I struggle with and the things I want to learn how to do. That's my whole reason for joining game jams. It is to learn and gain experience. If you learn one thing from this video, it is not that you shouldn't do prototypes or that you should start with the graphics now. What I want you to learn is to try different things and see what works for you. People may give you the best advice, recommend you things that will make all the sense in the world, and you should listen to them, but ultimately, how you approach development, how you organize your work, how you stay motivated, those are very personal things, and you need to discover what works best for you. I swear this is genuine advice and not me just trying to justify my bad development practices, I swear. So, let's get the difficult stuff out of the way. And I could identify two things immediately. One, the player model. You will be controlling a water-fueled robot that will explore around and dig. I didn't mention it before, but when I was brainstorming, I decided that the setting of the game would be the desert. You know, heat waves, digging water, desert, makes sense. So that must be considered for the robot design. First I have to decide what it's going to look like and then model it and animate it. The second thing I thought was going to be a problem was the environment. First, how the hell do you make good looking environments? I don't know. But besides that, I'm kind of imagining the game in an open area. Where does the open area finish? And how? Do I just make a big circle and put walls around it? How big should I make it? If it's too big, will the game lag or have some other performance issues? I don't know. The first thing I did was look for references. If you learn one thing from this video, let it be the thing I talked about before. If you learn two things from this video, let the second thing be always use references. When drawing, when 3D modeling, when designing, always use reference, please. I looked for concept art of robots, excavators, desert vehicles, and ended up finding this. Look at it, it's perfect. Perfect. A scorpion for a desert game. How did I not think of this? Link to the artist in the description cause they be cooking. So let's say I took some inspiration from this design. In the end, my version doesn't look anything like it because of my lack of artistic ability, but it's fine. He's my son and I love him, and you will be nice to him. Next, the environment. Since I still didn't know how big I wanted it to be, I preemptively made a very basic chunk system. The entire map will be composed of sections, or chunks, and each section will manage itself. I made it so each chunk will spawn several water spots where the player will dig, and one hideout where you can shelter yourself from the heat waves. For the hideouts, I looked for some assets, since if I tried to model everything myself, I would not finish in a month. And more importantly, it will not look as good. So of course I had to resort to K. Lewisberg, also known as K-Kit, one of the GOATs for us 3D game devs. I ended up making the top portion of the hideout myself, and then combining it with K-Kit's assets. Finally, I just chopped everything together. I made a very small test of Godot's vehicle body node, and then slapped my model on top of it. Starting to look like something, just one problem. These took me 2 weeks to make. Okay, to be fair, I was not working on this 24/7. But I could have done a little bit better. Anyways, 2 weeks have passed and I have zero gameplay except for the fact that you can move around. So let's start coding. First, player actions, radar and drill. I made them work similarly. You hold a button for a couple of seconds, which will make you slow down if you're moving. and then the actual action starts. Why? Because using a drill while driving is not safe. Okay, but for real, it's so I can have a clear position where you're acting. The radar checks for water spots nearby the player and toggles a VFX so you can see them. The drill checks if you're inside the area of a water spot and then triggers a extracting state on said water spot. The extracting state lasts a few seconds and then the water spot despawns. I made it so when the water spot disappears, a new one appears somewhere in the same chunk. That way you'll never run out of water refills. Next, weather system. I may have overcooked with this one. I added a bunch of rules and probabilities to make it seem more dynamic, but I don't think I accomplished much. Basically, it's just a number that randomly changes over time. When the temperature reaches the maximum allowed value is when we consider a heat wave is occurring. This state persists for a few seconds and then the temperature drops and stabilizes. For a little bit at least, until another heat wave starts approaching. Next, player water tank and inner temperature. The hotter the weather, the faster the inner temperature rises, and during a heat wave it will increase extra fast. Then the higher the inner temperature, the faster your water tank will deplete. There are two ways to lower your inner temperature. One is moving under a hideout. While you stay there, your temperature will slowly decrease. The other way is with the water spots. While extracting water from them, the player will refill their water tank and also lower their inner temperature. And when I thought I was making good progress, I noticed another week had passed. Yeah, I know I'm making very slow progress, but don't worry, I wouldn't be recording a video if I didn't manage to finish the game, right? Then you notice the title of the video is like, how my gamejam project failed or something like that. There is one last gameplay thing to code, but there is some other stuff that I want to get out of the way too. Something I haven't mentioned yet, but is, in my opinion, the second most important thing in any game after gameplay. Sound. Remember when I said visuals are the most difficult thing? I changed my mind. It's sound effects. I don't want to know how long I spent on this, but it needed to be done. Now the map is feeling kind of empty, so I picked a couple of K-Kits assets to put in there. I also made a couple of props myself. I then updated the chunk system so the props will appear randomly in the map without interfering with anything important. Finally, time to get back to the gameplay. You will think, but why not add a setting that switches between Celsius and Fahrenheit in the UI? That's important too, right? Okay, for real now. We can move around, we can somewhat interact with the world, but we don't have a winning condition. Or a losing condition for that matter. I mean, if you run out of water, you're supposed to die, but right now nothing happens if your water tank is empty. Let's add treasure spots. I copy-pasted the water spots code, I'm not gonna lie. Only difference is when you use the drill, they spawn a gem. That's it. They work exactly the same. Well, the treasure spots don't respawn like the water ones, and there is only 3 on the entire map. Find all of them and you win. A message appears that says you won. That's it. I don't know what else to do. Now with just a couple of days left, I checked the visuals once again. I noticed that even with the props, the map still looked empty. It felt flat. So I had the idea to use a noise texture on the ground, and I don't know if it's just me, but I think it was a great change. Lastly, this water spot VFX was supposed to be a placeholder that I will only replace if I had the time. I almost submitted the game with it, but ended up replacing it. I tried copying, I took inspiration from this water effect from Paper Mario. I didn't manage to pull it off like I wanted, but I thought it was not that big of a deal. And that was the last thing to do. I built the game, uploaded it and tested it on itch.io. we're done. I just need to submit the game to the jam. I mentioned at some point that my reason for joining game jams is learning. So what did I learn? Well, first, making games is hard. I didn't learn that, I already knew it, but oh my god, is making games difficult. There is so much to do, and everything is complicated, and if you're on your own, it's borderline impossible to make anything decent. Okay, but on a more positive side, I used Godot's vehicle body for the first time. That's something. The player model. I think I did a very decent job. This was my first time rigging a non-humanoid model, and everything worked. The eye key for the arms, legs and tail was almost identical to the ones used for humanoid arms and legs, so this was easier than I expected. I think I could have tried harder with the graphics though. The VFX are really simple, and I didn't do much with the lighting other than changing the color during heat waves. To be fair, this is a game jam, so you kinda want to make a WebGL build, so your game is playable on browser, and that way more people play the game. And WebGL builds are limited on the amount of stuff you can do visually. Still, I think I could have done better. Remember the advice I gave about finding the way you work the best and adjusting development to your own way? I didn't do any of that. I mean, I did start with the 2 tasks I was the most worried about, as I said I would. But after that, I just worked on random stuff in random order. I didn't even use a Kanban board this time. I always use a Kanban board to keep track of things. This time I didn't, I just YOLO'd the game. Also, the other advice I gave about using references, besides the player model, I didn't use them. I looked for references, but I didn't use them. I didn't follow my own advice, I am a fraud. But all I mentioned until now is what I think about the game. And I made the game, so my opinion doesn't count. Luckily, I got many comments on the jam submission page. So let's see what other people thought about it. Well, most people liked how the game looked and how the vehicle controlled. They said it was fun to play. Also, many people thought my theme interpretation was very creative. Nice. But most people agreed on one criticism. It is not clear enough what the objective of the game is. Thinking about it with the added insight of everyone's comments, I can clearly see the issues. Since the treasure spots are rare, you're more likely to find water spots with the radar. But I just noticed, the player doesn't know that treasure spots are of a different color. You have no way of knowing, unless you're watching this video, I guess. The player may think that the water spots can give treasure too, or they may assume that the treasures are obtained a different way. Even if you find a treasure, there is no player feedback. It just pops up. Is that it? Are there more of these? How many more? I updated the itch.io page of the game with clearer explanations, but the worst part is that this problem could have been mostly solved within the game with one tiny feature. Add a treasure counter on the UI. That's it. You see 0 out of 3 treasures found, you have a clear objective. Find the 3 treasures. It was so obvious. It would have taken me 5 minutes to implement. Why didn't I do it? Okay, I'm being dramatic for no reason. It would have helped, but not totally solved the issue. Ideally, I'd want further hints in-game, maybe even a tutorial. Or even better, a more interesting objective. But you know what? Even if I think I could have done better, even if the game has some problems, I consider this game jam a success. Why? Because I actually finished the game and submitted it. This is the first game jam that I started a project and managed to submit it in over a year. Yes, I have commitment issues, I'm sorry. I feel accomplished by just finishing this project. And what if it's not perfect? I don't care. I'll just try to do better next time. There's gonna be a next time, right? Thank you so much for watching. This was my first devlog and my first YouTube video on this style, so I would appreciate it if you let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I accept any kind of suggestion, opinion, compliment, criticism, hate message, anything, leave it in the comments. Also check the games submitted to the GitHub gamejam. There were a lot of submissions, and many of them are really cool games. And if you end up playing my game, let me know what you think about it too. I plan on doing more game development content in the near future, probably more gamejam devlogs. Other than that, I stream every week on Twitch, so you can find me there too. I usually stream Cuphead speedruns. I know, completely random and unrelated, but a man can have multiple hobbies, okay? I also stream game development from time to time, and I want to start doing it more often. One last thing I wanted to talk about, I briefly mentioned during the video a project called Nexus. It is a fan game I've been working during this year about a VTuber called Zentreya. If you don't know her, she's awesome. She's one of the most creative and selfless people in the VTubing and streaming community, so I really recommend you to check her out. Earlier this year, I released a demo with the first 2 stages, and I plan to release the full game at some point of 2026. Again, I would be really thankful if you could check the Nexus demo and let me know what you think. Links to all the things I've mentioned will be in the description below. Well, that's all for now. I've been Tosun the Viper. Wait, did I introduce myself at the beginning of the video? And hopefully I'll be back with another video soon. Bye bye!